Today, ladies and gents, we're unpacking what it means to process 150 petabytes of data per day. We're breaking down why the companies of tomorrow, Notion, Atlassian, Microsoft, more top tier logos are choosing Statsig. Today, we're joined by Vijay Raji, founder and CEO of Statsig. They're building a unified platform for product development. And today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the infrastructure, the thinking behind it, how engineers are actually empowered to make hundreds of informed decisions a day in this high pressure environment. There might even be a little bit of sprinkling of AI in there. Who knows? Who knows? We're going to wait and see. VJ, what a legend for tuning in this late. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Elliot. It's good to be here.
Give us a bit of a background into you. Who's VJ? Walk us through that.
Okay. I fundamentally identify myself as an engineer. So I grew up growing up as an engineer wanting to work at Microsoft, which was at that time the dream company for me and a lot of folks. And then I spent 10 years at Microsoft and then went on to build lots of products at Facebook, now Meta. And so I worked on ads, marketplace, and then entertainment, gaming, and so on. And then I spent another 10 years at Facebook. And I looked back and I said, like, okay, what's the next big thing I want to go do for the next 10 years? I decided to go start a company, and that's Statsig. I've been on this journey for about 4.5 years now. We're building a lot of developer focused tools to help other people make better decisions on a day to day basis, just like what you said.
Love it. 4.5 years. That's quite an interesting time from 2020 to 2025. A lot has changed.
Oh, yes.
What's that entrepreneurial journey been like?
A lot of learning, a lot of mistakes, and a lot of humility. I think like there's part of like starting a company and growing a company teaches you is there's a lot that we don't know, and whatever dimension that we think we know, want to like leverage those. But for the rest, you want to like surround yourself with great people that know those dimensions. And so that is something that I've learned over the last 4.5 years.
Love that. What strikes me about you, meeting you over the last couple of months, is you're deep in thought. You're a very thoughtful guy. I want to understand the thought process, the mission, the vision of Statsig, and why you wanted to build a company.
Yeah. Okay. So, at least for my personal journey, the idea of building a company was separated from like what to go build. A lot of folks, a lot of founders, they get inspired by some specific area of passion that they want to go start a company around it. So for me, it was a little bit different. I spent 10 years in a large company like Microsoft. And then I joined Facebook when Facebook was considered a startup. It was in like 1,300 people at that time in 2011. And then, as you can imagine, the company grew really fast. Along with that, also like got a lot of learning opportunities. So to me, there was a pretty cool moment where I was able to have perspective on like how software was built in the Microsoft days, where you have like software that was designed over 2 years and then built and then shipped in shrink wrap boxes that go sit on like shelves of Best Buy and Circuit City. And then when I went over to Facebook, code was shipping every single day. Developers were writing code, and that code would just find itself to like billions of people that very night. And to me, that was kind of like a pretty eye-opening moment, and also something that told me that this is how software is going to be built in the future. So to me, that kind of like the conviction built over time. And then also like, with family and kids and financial situation, you kind of like want to like set yourself up to succeed in a startup environment where you're not going to have the cushion or the luxury of like a regular paying job. It's a startup. And so you take risks. And so when all of those things came together, and that was in 2021, smack in the middle of the pandemic, I decided to leave and go start the company.
Of course, you did in fine fashion.
Totally.
Um, I do want to talk about that 2011 journey to where we are today in terms of how we build software, because I think it comes together for us to really understand maybe a number of principles as to how Statsig came to be and what it continues to evolve to be. But talk to us about Statsig, this unified product development platform. Who are you? What have you built? And by the way, for people that I've told that I'm having you on the show, they're like, "Wow, uh, I love this." Tuning in straight away as soon as that lands.
I love it. Yeah, so the journey for Statsig, in order to understand what's motivating me or what's motivating a set of us that started the company on day one, you got to take a little bit of a journey back, which is, as I mentioned, software. The way software was built used to be in this waterfall model, right? You know, you'll have product managers that would go and build requirements document based on the conversations with customers, and that requirements document goes on to like at that time, we used to call them architects that would translate that into big block diagrams. You remember UML diagrams back in the day? So those things. And then the engineering team will go build it, the QA team will test it, and then validate it. There's a lot of validation that happens before this piece of software just like gets in front of users and customers. Um, no more are people building software that way. People are building software with a lot of instrumentation built into it, and then they ship it, and then you validate the software in production a lot of times, and then you run a lot of experiments to validate your original intuition to verify if those intuitions are still standing. To me that like is a pretty massive evolution of like how software is built. When I first encountered this way of building software, I was like convinced that this is not going to last, this is not going to work. In fact, like when I went into Facebook, one of the things that was like fascinating was like, how is this site, back then it was just a website, there was no mobile apps, how is this site alive? Like everything about the intuition that I had tells me that this is going to break because we never did QA testing. um so it was a realization, it was a moment of realization when I thought like, okay, a lot of tools are orchestrated together in order to like make this site work, to validate code that is being shipped. And when code ships, it's not necessarily that the product is or the features are shipping, and so those things are decoupled. And then a lot of validation happens internally from the tools, in order to verify like something is going to work or not, and then that's how it reaches people. um so that kind of like, in a way, the tools kept everything alive, and the tools also shaped the culture. Like when you enable a set of things to happen, the culture evolves to like actually take advantage of that, so to the point where everything was measured, performance was measured, revenue was measured, engagement was measured, stickiness, there's like 100 different metrics, everything was measured. When you measure all of those, even culturally, performance reviews were measured. So you kind of like see a downstream effect of like how data permeates everything. And so that part was fascinating. And when I looked outside, not very many people at that time was didn't have all of the tools at their disposal. So uh, it was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to like actually build the tools. I was convinced that this product evolution is going to continue happening, and we need to build the tools in order to aid that product evolution. And that kind of like gave me the conviction to like, startups are a leap of faith, right? At the end of the day, you don't know everything, and you need to know. And so you have whatever data you have, and you jump. And to me, that was enough conviction to like, okay, I'm going to go build these tools, and this is going to be very helpful for people as they evolve in their software journey. And a fascinating thing I'll also like say is, about a year and a half into our journey, AI just broke out, and everything was just now accelerated. Like AI is, one of the most profound use cases that AI found is the coding, is development, product development. And guess what? That accelerated like how people build software. And now more than ever, instrumentation, validation, quantification of all of the work that you're doing using AI becomes extremely important.
Yeah. Have you seen that shift over the last what would be now, I think 3.5 years since you started building the company
Yeah.
to that inflection point of 18 months to now? Like, What have you seen change?
Yeah, it's like there is a lot of adoption of AI and what I would classify as generations of companies. So we saw a set of companies like Notion that picked up Notion Brex, that picked up AI and adopted all of those things into their products. And they all use Statsig in order to measure, okay, when I introduce AI into this workflow, how much better is the user experience, how much better is it for the customers or for the business, and they were quantifying all of that stuff. To me, what's going on is like the first generation of companies, when they adopt AI, there's going to be like such a huge leap from like their baseline. So wherever they are right now, when you introduce AI, you're going to have like subjectively an experience that is like a step function up. And now, once that becomes the baseline, you need to continue iterating. So then the generation two companies are now iterating on top of the baseline that they've already established, which is now, everybody is using AI. Now that's the baseline. Okay, now we have to introduce a new model, introduce new prompts, change new temperature, frequency, penalty, and all token length in a very different kinds of like combinations of these parameters will have to be tweaked in order to like optimize your experience for those specific use cases. So it's like just like throwing one sledgehammer is not going to work for every use case. And so that's what we're seeing at this point.
Yeah, okay, interesting. You've spoken a couple of times around intuition from your journey at Facebook on how tools are being built, and tools are almost leveraging the platform, setting the playing field for the culture. We have also seen the rise in coding AI tools. And there has been a lack of quantification around productivity or what people have been building, which kind of segues quite nicely into my question here of data driven decisions. And that's exactly what Statsig do. Yeah, that's your bread and butter of how you've built the platform to be able to help people. Walk us through in Statsig, you're able to make data driven decisions, and share a couple of examples of what that would actually look like under the hood on a day to day basis.
Yeah. So fundamentally, the concept of code being decoupled from products is such an important element that you just got to internalize. Okay. So we have what 60 or so engineers that they're building on a daily basis. They're making tons of commits on a daily basis. You kind of like have hundreds of commits that are actually hitting production. We ship code every day. And so whenever this new code is shipped, if that code is not behind a feature flag, that is going to be revealed to all the users. And like that's going to be like half baked stuff. Sometimes it's not going to work. And so all of those code that is being newly deployed has to be behind a feature flag. And then the feature flags are also kind of like it's a graph because there's dependencies. So one feature depends on another, which means this flag has to depend on the other flag, and so you cannot accidentally turn on a flag with all the dependencies not being satisfied. So you got to like maintain that. Once you have that, then once everything has been shipped and committed, then at that one point, then the product team will decide, okay, I'm going to turn on this feature. And when you turn on this feature, you're not going to turn it on to 100%. You're going to turn it on to like 5 or 10%, and then verify number one, is it breaking, is it crashing more, is it throwing errors that it should not, and then what is the call stack. So first step is like when I turn on a feature, I'm going to be watching my logs and seeing if there's anything that is like an anomaly that we will detect. And then if everything is looking good, then you keep that going for maybe a few days until you validate that this is actually not regressing any of the metrics that we care about. At which point we will then open it up to all customers. And so this is on a daily basis. This just happens. Like it's almost like you don't even think about it subconsciously. It just happens. And what that really means is like every line of code is now being tested, is now being quantified, is also making sure that you're not regressing anything that you've already built. And so that once that becomes part of the culture, then it becomes like a no-brainer.
Love that. And if I was an engineer, if I was a team, I embed the Statsig product into what we're building, bake it in, and I've got that visibility and that observability of our product development lifecycle.
100%. Yes.
Love that. That doesn't come without its challenges, though. And some very interesting challenges are some of the scale and the infrastructure that you're standing up to support some of these incredible businesses, the logos that we spoke about. Walk us through what that looks like. 150 petabytes per day of data that you're processing, plus more challenges. Talk to us about what happens in the day of Statsig.
Yeah. Okay. So we have hundreds of companies that individually have what they consider big data. So each one of those companies will have, I'm talking about hundreds of terabytes of data, and which you put it all together, we now handle hundreds of petabytes of data on a daily basis. We bring in at last count, I was like probably last month ago, so like we were looking at 1.6 petabytes of data, new data every single day, and that's coming through like 1.5 trillion events every single day, which translates to about like 20 million events every single second. So that's the scale at which we operate, because we are able to process and collect and quantify the impact of like all of these companies. Um, so number one is reliability, and which is like all of these companies depend on Statsig to be able to like provide real time diagnostics. And then when they do launch features, they want to know what's regressing, what's not regressing as quickly as possible. And then lastly, they want to like know, okay, if I launch a new feature, how impactful is it? And so it's part of like cultural transformation. All of these are kind of like you have to depend on it. If you can't depend on the tool, then you can't really trust it. So reliability is number one. So we have about 24 different zones around the world in order to like reduce latency, to provide redundancy. If one of these zones go down, we're like easily able to like handle that without really bringing down the service. And then we also have lots of redundancy even within zones. We have like different applications. I think there's three different instances of the same application in each of those zones, and to be able to like handle again the load. So all of this is like done in like some sort of a load balancing model where if one of the apps is being overloaded, it's automatically like diverting traffic to the other apps and so on. So that's kind of like my infrastructure team does an amazing job. Like they all built infra at scale, both in Facebook and Google and Amazon and large companies before. And so these are the guys that are like building all of these infrastructure for Statsig. And so that's the primary thing. So to keep everything alive, and then to make sure that we have like uptime of like 4 nines. Then the second thing is like, okay, how quickly can we like receive all these events? Because these events are like, there's like trillions of events every single day. You have to receive these events, and you need to like stash them, because you don't want to lose at any given point in time. You don't want to ever lose these events, and so you need to have like a very reliable way of like taking these events, stashing them, and not processing them at this in real time. Because when you start processing, that's where all kinds of like instabilities will creep in. So we have a very safe backup for all of these events the moment it hits our servers, and then we do a processing on an async basis. So that's another one of those infrastructure decisions we made. And like one of the things like I will call out, we didn't have all of these insights going in, right? So we had to like make the mistakes, learn from it. We have had outages. We're like we've had sevs before that have like each one of these have been like learning moments for us that we will then go and like improve our infrastructure. And then there's a entirely a massive data pipeline that we run. That's the part that we join hundreds of trillions of rows, which translate to like several hundred petabytes of data.
I was going to ask, where have been some of those inflection points on that technological journey where you've had to make shifts, i.e., your second point around processing events, async, making that decision? Where have been some of those inflection points on this journey of we need to approach solving this problem
Yeah,
differently?
scale. Scale has been one. So when we started off, anything that just worked end to end was okay, right? So we just patched up things together. So we used Azure, we used Event Hub, and kind of like, okay, well, we have this pub sub model that works because everybody is using it. So we started using it, and then we used, I believe, Databricks for the pipeline until we hit some inflection point. I believe it was like Notion when they had their entire traffic came to Statsig, and we are like, oh crap, we can't really like process all of those in Databricks because it's going to become very expensive. So we need to like figure out like what's the more efficient way of doing things. We also cannot be like dumping individual events into Event Hub because that's just like crazy scale. I mean, like, Event Hub is not meant to be operated that way. And so then we started batching these events in Event Hub. So all we did was like we batched everything, and we assigned a GUID to that batch, and then we would put that GUID into the Event Hub so we can like keep the sequence of those events intact. But now we're like a couple orders of magnitude smaller in terms of like the events that we pump into Event Hub. So that was one big inflection point. And then I think Flipkart was the second inflection point where Flipkart is a large retailer in India with I think about 600 or 700 million people using it. And when you do that, like when you run experiments across like 600 700 million subjects, you have exposure times users times experiments. You kind of like immediately multiply this massive explosion of like data. And so we had to like at that point figure out another way to like do sequencing of events. We moved away from Event Hub. We started building our own system, which is very very specialized just for our use case, and so on. And then we started using a combination of BigQuery and a homegrown solution for Orchestrator with Spark. And so yeah, so these are all like the scale has been a pretty interesting inflection point for us.
I want to try and dig into, if we can, what have you been able to learn from the likes of Flipkart, the likes of Notion Scale? Because you're in this incredible position where you've got a lot of visibility on how different companies are building their products. As a founder, a visionary, how do you take some of that and implement that into making your business better?
Yeah, so we learn a lot from our customers. Every time we work with one of our customers, we're always fascinated by how unique each infrastructure implementation is. Like because these companies have been successful, and the fact that they've been very successful means that um, you don't always have thought about like the scale. You don't have pristine architecture, so you kind of like have to put things together in order to like make things continue to scale. And a lot of our job with our existing customers is like, okay, well, how do we make sure that Statsig integrates with your existing solution and operates without really like adding any overhead or causing you disruption? And so as part of that, we've learned a lot. As part of that, it's kind of like the reason why we invested in warehouses was primarily driven by customers' requests, where we're starting to see a lot of adoption of warehouses because back in the day the cloud used to be the infrastructure. Now the warehouse is the infrastructure. People are asking for like applications on top of the warehouses. So in a way, kind of like our implementation or our pivot a couple of years ago in order to go invest heavily in warehouses was something that we learned from customers.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating the trend, and I also starting to notice that a lot of AI usage is generating, I think like even more data, and they're going straight into the warehouses too.
Yeah, I think that will be a really interesting trend to continue to see where people are continuing to use AI tools. And you're probably, if I was to look at a graph of uptick of usage of Statsig, probably does do something quite hockey stick wise. And I can imagine it will continue to go in that direction.
Yeah, we've we didn't build Statsig as an AI company, but we found ourselves in the middle of everyone that is adopting AI, leveraging Statsig for their adoption, and so we've had a tremendous amount of tailwind from that.
Yeah, I think you've touched on intuition, quantification. we're in this really interesting time where vibe coding, using tools, building something, we need quantification now, especially C level, making decisions. How do we build teams? What do we integrate? So, this quantification part, I think, is an absolute game changer for where the industry's going.
Yeah. I generally think about like the software, the complexity of software we build today. Um, has is like compared to like 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I think it's natural for someone with a lot of product intuition to like come in and say, okay, well, we're gonna go build this, and this is gonna result in these things, and that's pretty straightforward. It's very hard today with the amount of complexity and the abstraction that we use. You know, we no longer build everything from scratch. We use existing abstractions, and we build on top of those abstractions. So I believe it's very, very hard for anyone today to say, like, okay, well, this particular feature is going to have all of these impact and all of these side effects. I think it's impossible. So, especially now with AI and vibe coding and a lot of like times you don't even realize like how much code is being spit out by AI. And so now you're going to ship all of that stuff, which is like the only way you're going to know if something is working or not is by instrumenting it, is by quantifying it. Whether something is crashing more, whether something is improving your retention, engagement, revenue, all of those stuff has to be measured. So much so that I think like in the future, these agents are going to like continue building based on the signals that they get back from the application. So for example, if the application's crashing, the agents have now enough information to be able to like put up a PR that fixes the crash, and you could put that PR behind a feature flag and then turn on the feature flag for like 5% of the people and then verify that the crash is being fixed. And if it is fixed, then you actually turn it on to 100% of the people. So I'm talking about self-healing applications run by agents with instrumentation coming back from Statsig. So we're talking about a world where I think more and more we're not going to understand what's out there, what code is running out there.
Yeah. For what you can share, for the next 3 to 6 months, I'll keep it at that time bracket, let's say. Where are you thinking companies are going to be betting, building when it comes to AI agents? And second question, how does that mean that you as founder or you as a lead part of the leadership team will direct the team on how we continue to innovate inside of Statsig?
Yeah. Um, I so there's a few aspects that I think there's AI is going to transform, where taking ideas into working prototypes. I think that's going to evolve quite rapidly, and you can see like a lot of companies actually betting on that. Then there is the assistance that currently, if you think about like Cursor and Windsurf, and these companies are like providing lots of assistance to what I call like advanced programming, where you have a code base, you're actually like, you know, building features on top of that code base where AI can understand that code base and start to provide pretty meaningful assistance. And that's going to continue improving as well. Where if I think about like, you know, what should Statsig do in these kind of like, you know, the next 3 to 6 months, what we're thinking about is like we have lots and lots of data for each customer. This data is all about like, you know, how people use our customers' products, and what can we do to help our customers build better products. So that's, you know, if you can like start to think about like what are possible in that realm, that's where we're thinking.
I see what you're doing there. Very smart. Very smart. Um, let's wrap up. Let's understand, of course, on that journey as well over the next 6 months, how you might be growing the team and what areas. This is a really good opportunity for you to talk to subscribers, help us understand, what hires you might be looking to make into the team.
Static, we from day one we've always been hiring. So we have an interview process. We have a hiring bar. If you clear the bar, you have a job, and that's how we've always had it. And um, to me, the areas that we're going to be investing in, I mean, obviously, we'll do a lot of ML hiring and AI hiring to advance the vision that I just described. Um, One of the things about Statsig is like we are an in-person company. We're in Seattle, and we continue to be building in the area because there's like extremely good talent that that I'm not going to ever run out of. And so I'm building this culture of like everyone in person deciding, making lots of cool hundreds of decisions on a daily basis and moving really fast. And that's kind of like kept us surviving for the last 4.5 years. And so that's one. The other thing that I also consider is like hiring is a one way door. So a lot of times when companies do well, they go out and like hire a lot of people, and then they realize that okay, well, we maybe overhired, and then you go through layoffs. And so one of the things I'm very very careful about is like going through one way doors, have to be very careful, be conservative about it. And so our company has been growing. We've been very frugal about like how we use the money that we have raised, and we keep our bar high to keep the talent density strong. And so we're always hiring. So if you're interested in like joining Statsig, you should definitely reach out, and we'll go through an interview loop.
Love it. You should definitely reach out. I think you've listened to the last 30 minutes on some of the awesome stuff that these guys and girls are doing. Vijay, you've been a star. Thank you for coming to talk to us. A little bit about Statsig, a little bit about why you built the business, and some of the really interesting challenges that you're finding within Statsig.
Thanks, Elliot. This has been great. I enjoyed having this conversation. Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. You should go and check out Careers site. You should go and check out Vijay's profile, other people in leadership, connect with them. And of course, likes, shares, the subscribership, all that good stuff keeps this little ecosystem going around. So continue to do that. And Vijay, we will tune in 12 months' time. I'll be back.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Engineers is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found Engineers.io. It's no underscore. We've also got a website which is engineers.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.